Liverpool have a defensive problem, and if they don't sort that out in the Premier League, it will be tickets for fourth place and it will be tickets in the Champions League. Welcome to Tactical Tuesday, and if this is your first time here, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, because what we do over here is look at some of the tactics that were applied and some of the problems that Liverpool do face as a team. Now, getting straight into it today, we are going to be speaking about how the team plays. We're going to be looking at how they set up for set pieces and corners. And then I want to touch on what Liverpool's future prospects looks like when it comes to defensive play. So all the focus on the defense today. Now, what I've noticed, especially in that Bournemouth game, I think we saw it in the previous game against Burnley as well, is that Liverpool seem to be playing with two teams on the field at certain times. You've got these forward players that's running out there separately from the defensive players who play further at the back, and it leaves this gaping hole over there. And I think this is why in many times and situations we see Liverpool not picking up the second ball, or we see when we start making a move, when we start pressing, and Liverpool lose the ball, all of a sudden the opposition then is able to run almost the length of the pitch because they can exploit the space that is left between the forward pressing players and the defensive players who stay back. Now, there are moments when the fullbacks do push forward, and in those moments we oftentimes see one of the midfielders then dropping back just so that there can be this extra cover. And that is a little bit of a concern, that the team isn't pressing as a unit, and that's why they are missing some of these trigger moments when the press is supposed to be on, because there's not a full number of players that they can do the press with. And oftentimes when they then play the ball horizontally or they go back, the ball goes back so far that Liverpool almost end up back in their own half. So they've got a lot of possession, but a lot of that possession is in the middle of the park or in Liverpool's half, and that then doesn't allow them to look threatening. Now, this gap over here isn't just something that we see in open play, it's also something that we do see in set pieces. Now, when we go and we have a look at what the corners look like for Liverpool, I think we've seen some of this in last season as well. Liverpool didn't have any players standing on the edge of the box for in case they do lose the ball in the set piece and there's a counter attack that is now going to be pressed onto Liverpool. There were no defensive players on the edge of the box, and oftentimes Liverpool found themselves having to run back and then try and overtake the attacking players, take the ball, and then start the press again. This season, however, they've put two players on the edge of the box with one lane just a little deeper. And in this example over here, my opinion is that these are the wrong players doing the correct thing. So what I mean by that is that you do need those two players on the edge of the box, and you need one further deeper. But it cannot be the players who are there. You've got Rio and Gamoa, and you have Curtis Jones on the other side and Gravenberg laying back. Now, this is to allow the taller players like Virgil van Dijk and the other centre-back, in this case it was Wataru Endo, to go up higher and attack the ball over there. Now, in the past, this would have been perfect, but I think the way Liverpool is set up now at the moment, this is not the most ideal situation. What should be happening here is that the taller players and the players playing in an out-and-out striker role, those are the players who should be the aerial threats in the box. Over here, we can see the position of Hugo Ekitike standing too far away from where he should be a threat. He's waiting to pick up possibly a second ball and so that he can strike. But he should be in there challenging with the head so that we can have our defensive players in the position where Rio Ngamoa is and where Curtis Jones is. Why I say that is because these players are attack-minded. What happens in this sequence over here is the ball comes in, it goes to Rio Ngamoa eventually, and automatically his attack mind takes over. Instead of slowing the game down over here and passing the ball out to Ryan Gravenberg, he then tries to go on an attack and he loses the ball, and all of a sudden Bournemouth are on the attack. and the player makes a 74-yard run into Liverpool's box from this. So box to box, all of a sudden, they've got a counter on and Liverpool are on the back foot, and that's dangerous. And from that move, the ball goes out for a line out. The ball then crosses the field to the other line out, and then Bournemouth's third goal comes. And that's how dangerous these situations can be. In the first half, we saw our tallest forward who was on the field at the moment and playing in a striker role, Cody Gakpo, also standing behind Virgil van Dijk. Virgil van Dijk then, of course, does get the goal, which is fantastic, but it's not the ideal setup. And once again, you've got attacking players standing in defensive spots on the field. So when you break all of that down, the spacing problems, the timing problems, the decision-making on the field, then yes, Liverpool have a defensive problem. They've got defensive issues. And this is where I want to pivot the conversation very, very quickly, because if you look at our current situation, it looks like this. You don't have Leoni, he's out injured for the rest of the season. You don't have Connor Bradley, out injured as well. Ibrahima Konaté, unfortunately unavailable due to a tragedy in the family. And then Joe Gomez also now picks up an injury in that Bournemouth match. And all of a sudden, you are bringing in Endo as an option at centre-back. Now, this is no indictment or no criticism on Endo. That man gives everything for this team when he does play. But it tells me that we've got issues. And now a lot of fans are calling for spending in the January transfer window, and I can understand that. But that looks to me and sounds to me like these people are panicking and they want a panic buy. And that is not what you should do. In the January transfer window, you oftentimes find yourselves overpaying for a player, and this is just to fix a short-term problem. And you're going to be fixing that short-term problem at the expense of your long-term plan. Now, when we look at Liverpool's academy, then you have to be asking yourself, are these perhaps viable options? And if there aren't any viable options over there, then what are we doing? What are we actually doing with our academy players? Because let's have a look at who we have before we make the point. Amara Nallo, 6'1". He's represented England under 18, under 19, and under 20. He was brought into the first team or into the squad as early as 2023. He wasn't utilized, but I mean, that's a centre-back profile right there. Or take Wellity Lucky, for example. Also, he's 20 years old, not a kid anymore, 6'2". Dominant in the under 21 and reserve team. So what I'm saying is I'm not asking for them to be thrown in and we're hoping for the best, but we can bring them in for like 15, 20 minutes to go and play. And that's exactly what we should be doing with the academy players. Because if they're not viable options, then what's the pathway then for? What are we doing with this academy? Trent Alexander-Arnold wasn't the option. He wasn't ready until he was given a chance to play. Gerald Kwanzaa, he also wasn't ready until he was used. And then all of a sudden, it becomes very, very different. Liverpool have one of the best academies in the UK. And I think that this is such a fantastic option for Liverpool to go and explore, because they've got the players who already understand the Liverpool way. They already understand the Liverpool triggers when we play, and they understand our defensive play. These are options that should be explored. Coming back to Endo again, we can't be putting that amount of pressure on Endo as a midfielder. He doesn't get a lot of game time, and when he does come on, he's got to fulfill a role and a duty which he is not adequately adapted for when we have viable options. Makes me think that if the academy is not being used in the proper manner, that's not strategy. That's just branding.